Musk and Donald Trump, and instead heard this on a loop. Music going for about an hour. All we could see on Musk and Trump's feeds was this image right here. Musk is claiming it was a cyber attack, though I should note this has just now happened as we were coming on the air. We haven't seen any evidence of that. It is another major failure in the same vein as when Governor Ron DeSantis agreed to launch his presidential campaign in the same format in an interview with Musk and had an almost identical technical meltdown. When that happened, remember Trump posted that the launch and DeSantis' campaign was a disaster. Now tonight, his conversation with Musk has finally and belatedly gotten underway. We are monitoring it all. Right now, Trump is talking about his attempted assassination after vowing to not bring it up again following his speech to the Republican convention. I want to start this hour with some of our smartest minds to start us off. We have Aisha Mills at the table, a Democratic strategist who has advised more than a dozen members of Congress. David Polanski worked on 5 Republican presidential campaigns, including Ron DeSantis's. Also, New York Times national political reporter Estad Herndon and veteran media reporter Brian Stelter, the author of Network of Lies. Brian, I mean, this was kind of a big moment, not just for Donald Trump, but also for Elon Musk
for sure.
On Twitter, as I still call it.
This is why I love good old-fashioned television. It just works, you know. Everything actually works. This actually does show that streaming can struggle, especially when someone like Musk fired most of the technical staffers at the company formerly known as Twitter. He kind of had this coming. Musk says he'd been testing the servers ahead of time, trying to make sure this would work. We'll find out later what actually went wrong here. But it is embarrassing for Trump because every day he's been attempting a reset lately to try to take on Harris.
Yeah, and I mean, this is truly what he made fun of Ron DeSantis for, which, as you would know well, I mean, it's kind of perfectly timed that you're here. But I was looking at what Trump said when this happened to Ron DeSantis. He said, wow, the DeSantis Twitter launch is a disaster. This whole campaign will be a disaster. I mean, can you hear the laughs from the governor's mansion in Florida tonight?
I don't remember any of that. Look, I mean, obviously, I'm sure everybody involved wished it went better tonight. But I think this is a symptom of a larger issue right now, which is, for the first time in his adult political career, Donald Trump's struggling to get earned media attention. And we have not seen that. There have been days, but since 2015, they've been days and hours, not weeks on end. And so I think that's what you're seeing him reach out, doing press conferences, going to, journalist panels, and now doing events like this, because he is looking for ways to reach people and frankly have us here tonight talking, even if it's a bad Twitter event or a delayed one. It's better than a night of Kamala Harris is on the rise and succeeding. Well, that's what he has to do.
And her campaign is on Truth Social reposting Trump's truths about his interview. I mean, they're like really trying to troll him with this moment here.
They are trolling him. I mean, here's the thing, too. Trump is still running a playbook that is quite old and stale, frankly, in this political environment, trying to go after earned media as if it's the be-all, end-all, as opposed to actually campaigning. Kamala Harris has been making waves through really critical swing states and actually on the ground, gathering crowds, talking to people, building up the base of the Democratic Party who's going to come out and vote for her. Donald Trump is sitting at Mar-a-Lago most of the time and sitting on X or Truth Social or wherever spouting nasties as opposed to going out and trying to reach people. And if he thinks that earned media is the only way to get votes, he's going to have a real reckoning because Kamala Harris is actually going to win through the culture and going directly to the people.
Well, and I think when you look at what his strategy is, and I said I'm curious what you're hearing from sources, I mean, Trump was back on Twitter today. He has not been on Twitter since he was banned. Musk obviously bought the website, reinstated him. He posted his mugshot when he was indicted in Georgia last year, but until then he had not been posting until today, really trying to hype this conversation and to take back the headlines.
I think it's indicative of a campaign that continues to try to search these moments to flip the narrative. Donald Trump is returning to Twitter, not because that's the biggest audience in the world, but he knows media is there. He knows a lot of newsmakers and decision makers. It functions as a water cooler of sorts. And he wants to get his name back into the conversation. But to your point, the problem for Donald Trump is he's basically been chilling for a year or so, right? He hasn't been on the campaign trail in a big way. The legal problems kind of hid some of that. And most importantly, he had an opponent who was not doing much of that campaigning itself. The second that changed, this campaign has been been exposed for one that does not have the kind of offensive ability that I think some people thought they did. I mean, I think we looked at a race for the last year and a half that was stale, and it kind of presented Donald Trump as maybe a more imposing political figure than he was, but he continues to be at the same vote share he was a month ago, even before the RNC, even before the assassination attempts. That's indicative of a campaign that has reached a ceiling of voters and needs to try new things to win people over. And so far, it's not that they're not trying it, it's that it's not working.
And they also do not have the campaign apparatus to meet people where they are. The awesome thing about the Harris campaign, which started with the Biden campaign, is that the Democrats have been building infrastructure in the states for quite some time. So whether it's Nevada or Arizona or Michigan, et cetera, Pennsylvania, they have campaign offices and operatives all throughout those states that were ready as soon as the enthusiasm in the moment hit when Harris became the candidate to funnel all of the volunteers who were reaching out into some kind of mechanism to participate in the campaign. The Trump campaign clearly has none of that. They have no real ground game to get people out. And so he thought that he was going to win by just yelling nasties through our media. And now they're realizing that they're really at a loss because they don't have the same kind of
infrastructure. And I think that the Trump campaign would argue about what their ground game is looking like, saying, you know, they separate the political apparatus from the undisciplined candidate himself. And part of what's been driving him crazy are her crowd sizes. And seeing someone else getting crowd sizes that he used to see, to where now he's not only lying about his own crowd sizes, he's saying that hers are AI generated.
And I think he does this when he's feeling the most vulnerable, the most insecure. I went back at least for the Atlantic today about all the times that he's talked about crowd size since the inauguration. And it's not just that he promotes his own crowd size, he also minimizes others. Right? When Black Lives Matter protesters were in Washington, he pretended like there was a small crowd when it was a big crowd. When when his supporters were not showing up to his hush money trial, he pretended like it was impossible to get into the courtroom area to get it out of the courthouse, when in fact it was very easy to attend. He's always doing this when he feels insecure. And I think, to his defense, he has multiple reasons to be rattled right now. The assassination attempt, the idea that someone tried to kill him, the idea that now he's up against a woman of color and doesn't know how to react, the idea that she's getting bigger and bigger crowds. Those are three huge reasons why he could be rattled right now.
And let's be clear, he had this race won when he was in Milwaukee. I'm sorry, but Joe Biden wasn't going to win this race. He knew he had won the race, and what a shift just days later. That's a fundamental psychological shift, a political shift, and frankly, a narrative shift.
Right, and that's psychologically huge reasons to be rattled compared to a few weeks ago.
Well, and if you're advising his campaign, what would you say to him tonight?
Look, I mean, at the end of the day, this is always going to be a close race, unless Joe Biden was their nominee. He's not, and this is all come back to equilibrium here. You're going to see a very close contest. And I think that's why those field offices will matter in states like Michigan, Wisconsin, and Pennsylvania. Because you're going to see a race that's going to go